Example, Allah had prohibited riba, borrowing and lending money on interest, riba. But if you go to the Torah today, you'll see the Torah says that it is haram for an Israelite to lend money on interest to his brother Israelite. A Jew should not lend to a Jew on interest, no. Haram. But it is halal. He can lend money on interest to those who are not Jews. No. That's wrong. You have made halal what Allah made haram. And the rabbis accepted it and the people followed the rabbis. I lived in New York for 10 years, I know. So what they did was to make haram what Allah made haram, halal. In order for them to institute a monetary system which will prohibit the use of gold and silver as money, they needed big wars. And they needed to win the war. And that is the First and Second World War. And a new monetary system came to the world after the Second World War. That monetary system has been with us since then, 1944. But I have news for you tonight. There's another war coming, and it's just around the corner. And when that war comes, they're going to finish this monetary system. They don't need it anymore. And they'll bring a new one. But the Mufti doesn't know that. Who gives his bogus fatwa that the money we're now using is halal. Mufti, are you listening to me? Mufti, you're going to have to answer in the grave, Mufti, for declaring this money to be halal. No. This money was possible because they first declared that money to be haram. The Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund prohibit the use of gold as money. Dr. Mahathir was not aware of that. I am not a politician. I don't comment on politics. But when someone does what is right, I declare that he did what is right, and I don't care who is annoyed with me. A scholar of Islam doesn't bow his head before public opinion. Dr. Mahathir was not aware that the International Monetary Fund prohibited the use of gold as money. But Dr. Mahathir was able to recognize, as no one else recognized, that this was wrong. That this was wrong. That you cannot prohibit the use of gold as money. And Dr. Mahathir did what no one else did in the history of this country. Let me remind the Malaysian people, if they need to be reminded, that Dr. Mahathir did what no one else did ever did, and perhaps no one else will ever do. When I met him, I told him that. I said, you're the second one to do it. The first was General Charles de Gaulle. General Charles de Gaulle recognized that this was wrong, this was unjust. Bringing a new monetary system in the world, and in order for this bogus system to survive, you have to prohibit the use of gold as money. So Charles de Gaulle stood up in the French National Assembly in 1966. That's why the French people loved Charles de Gaulle. And he blasted them. In the French National Assembly, he blasted them. And he declared this to be an unjust monetary system that you brought into the world. And so they took out their knives for him. Yeah. And they finished him. And after after Charles de Gaulle, the only other one was Dr. Mahathir. And so this country should be proud of Dr. Mahathir. Because he recognized what no one else recognized. And no one else dares to recognize. They don't have the courage to recognize what he recognized. And tonight I have to give credit where credit is due, regardless of the price I have to pay. At the time when I said that Dr. Mahathir was only the second, I was wrong. I didn't know he was the third. I didn't know that there was one before him. I didn't know that there was one before Charles de Gaulle. But he's today forgotten. They call him a playboy. Ahmad Sukarno was more than a playboy. Ahmad Sukarno was more than a playboy. When Indonesia became independent, Ahmad Sukarno called in the ulama. He had the courage to do it. And he asked them about this money. I'm not a scholar of Islam, you are the scholar. Tell me, how can we have paper as money? How can we have paper as money? And the ulama replied to him and said to him, the paper would be halal only if it is redeemable in gold. Meaning you could take the paper and get the gold at a fixed rate. So the paper will be like a check. So Ahmad Sukarno decided that the Indonesian rupiah would be redeemable in gold, and he fixed the rate. But the people who want to rule the world, they had made that haram. In the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund. So they had to launch a coup via a crooked man called Suharto to get rid of Sukarno. British historian Arnold Toynbee wrote a book entitled Civilization on Trial. It was published in the 1940s, and in that book this eminent British historian said, this is what Western civilization wants to do. It's there in that book. But the scholars of Islam don't study anymore. No, they don't. And I have to restrain myself because my anger is so great. One of the ways in which they establish their rule over the world is to take away the Khilafah state from us, so they can establish their political dominion over us with the United Nations and so on. Another way in which they establish their rule over us is to take away money, which is halal, and replace it with another kind of money through which they can establish their control over the world. Their control today is so powerful. Their control over the world of money today is so powerful that even the most powerful states in the world are afraid that if you step out of line, they will destroy your money. They have a weapon. It's the most dangerous weapon ever created in human history, more powerful than nuclear weapons. It's called inflation. And if you step out of line, they destroy your money. Hugo Chavez, with greater courage and integrity than all of your leaders in the world of Islam, their excellencies, their majesties. Hugo Chavez, my neighbor, because I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, he's next door in Venezuela. Hugo Chavez, a Christian, not a Muslim. Hugo Chavez, with matchless courage and integrity, stepped out of line and challenged him. Today, the Venezuelan Bolivar is destroyed. Today, Venezuela has the highest rate of inflation in the world. And they do that to Venezuela to tell the rest of the world, you do what they did, this is what we'll do to you. And so the rest of the world have learned their lesson. Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe. What did he do? 20 years after Zimbabwe had become a so-called independent state. Independent, eh? But a bunch of British farmers owned 80% of the land, the arable land of Zimbabwe. And the black masses of Zimbabwe were poor, while these British farmers are wealthy. So they were now launching a revolution after the revolution against Mugabe for the constitutional agreement that he made. Stupid. And when Mugabe saw what the fire of the people, how angry they were, he took the land away from the British and gave it to the people. And because of that, one telephone call I wanted to make in Harare airport, because my flight arrived too early. And I wanted to call my people to tell them I've arrived. So I needed to change some money to make one telephone call, local call. How much will it cost? They said $2 million. $2 million. So from the time you step out of line, they destroy your money. And so now we are slaves. That's where we are. We have to obey them. Because if we do not obey them, our money will be destroyed. And we'll be as poor as the Indonesian maid. What? How did they do it? How did they get us to surrender money? One government to rule the whole world, including the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ, because the Khilafah state is gone. Nobody even crying over it. We've surrendered the market. They can now have one global market, controlling the market. And if you didn't know it, it's a market of thieves. It's a market of thieves. The free and the fair market is gone. Islam gave to the world the free and the fair market. A Muslim has no advantage over a Hindu in the market. A Muslim has no advantage over a Jew in our market. No. We do not engage in economic boycotts. We do not engage in that shameful thing called economic sanctions. We do not use trade and business as a weapon, not in Islam. We say that business must be contracted or conducted إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ تِجَارَةً عَنْ تَرَادٍ مِنْكُمْ. The beautiful language of the Quran. That in the conduct of business, there is mutual satisfaction. So if Russia trades with Turkey, there is benefit for Russia and there is benefit for Turkey. And if you impose a trade boycott, you cut off your own nose. That's our conception of business. So we never use trade And we never use business as a weapon, not in Islam. That market is gone today. We surrendered the market, in consequence of which today they dictate the terms of the market, and we are slaves in the market. I had to give you this introduction to take you to the point now where I can say to you, we also surrendered money. We also surrendered money. The money which is in the Quran, the money which is in the Sunnah, we surrendered it. And what did we accept in return? Since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the language in the Quran, I can use it. He says in Surah Al-Jum'ah that the example of a people who were given the Torah and then did not live in accordance with the obligations which came from the Torah is that of a donkey, otherwise known as an ass. And Imran calls it a jackass. It's the same word. A donkey, an ass, a jackass. But the word jackass has more sting in it. So I use that to sting them. Allah says it's the example of a jackass with a load of books on his back. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا. Yes, we surrendered money like a bunch of jackasses. And up to now, you cannot find a prominent scholar of Islam anywhere in the world who is prepared, who has the courage to stand up and say that the substitute which has come is bogus, it's fraudulent, it's haram. The first thing we learn is that something called modern Western civilization appeared on the stage of the world. And it is modern Western civilization which appeared on the stage of the world with an agenda. If you did not know it, let us tell it to you. An agenda of establishing their political and economic and financial and monetary and every kind of dominion over the whole world, including the Ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. The only way they can succeed in establishing their political dominion over the whole world is if we surrender the Khilafah state. Allah's Messenger gave us the Khilafah state that the Jews got from Nabi Dawood and Nabi Sulaiman. We got it from Muhammad alayhi salam. We surrendered the Khilafah state. Not only have we surrendered the Khilafah state, we don't even remember it. We are comfortable with the substitute which is coming. Thanks.